Danielson comes out. They showed highlights of his speech with the mentor, Jeff Jarrett, last week. And he comes out, huge yes chants, and Bryan Danielson says, "It's great to be here in Greenville." And I'm not just saying that for a cheap pop, which you just gave me. I really mean it, because me and my wife got our engagement photos done here. And they're like, yeah, we have some great backdrops. We love the downtown area. It's like, this is the most ridiculous start to a serious promo I have ever heard.
So ridiculous that, I mean, it can't be anything but true.
Well, he says, and me and my wife, Bree, we were looking at those photos recently, and you don't realize it's the good old days until it's almost gone. The crowd's chanting, no, no. He says, I'm here to talk about two things, presents and promises. And he says, I was present ever since I came out of retirement, and I've been enjoying the good old days. It's the most fun of my career being here in AEW. I felt present in the back. I felt present walking out here when you chanted for me, and the crowd starts chanting, and he seems genuinely moved here. He needs to take a second. And he made a promise. He promised his daughter that when she turned 7, he would stop wrestling full time. And he said that when he signed with AEW, it would be his last contract. And that contract expires tomorrow. And based on the reaction from this stunned audience, I don't know what their YouTube numbers are like in Greenville, because no one watched that video where he revealed this to Renee last week.
Yeah. Maybe
they must have been so confused. Wait, your contract's up tomorrow? Does that mean it's done? How are you doing this match in 3 weeks?
I think the concept of extensions wasn't necessarily made clear in the promo. Maybe he could have added that. Maybe
he had to describe my lack of presence when I was hurt means that my promise of being done on August 1st is being extended. My presence is required beyond this end date. So he said, during this time, I've kicked a lot of heads in, but I have not won the AEW title yet, which was another one of his promises. This is my last shot at Wembley. The doctors, my family, they don't want me to wrestle, but I'm promising to go to Wembley. I promise to be present for that moment, and I promise to give everything I have. And it may be the greatest line of a wrestling promo. And I promise to give 100% where 101% is not possible. It's like, yes, for all this time, finally. I always hated that. I always hated that as a kid when someone say, I'm going to give 110%. I'm like, not possible.
Totally, yes. By the end of this speech, I was ready to, jump into a football field and just ram somebody down.
So he promises to go all in with his body and soul. And then out comes Swerve. And Swerve explains that he respects Bryan Danielson. You inspired a generation, including myself. And normally I'd be rooting for you to have this moment. But this is Swerve Strickland's time. I came to AEW and I too promised to win the title, and I did. And he said, I'm one of a kind. I'm so ahead of my time that 10 years from now, people are going to want to press rewind. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go and rewatch one thing on this show, watch Bryan Danielson's reaction to this line and how Swerve kept a straight face when he got this out, because Danielson thought this was the corniest line he has ever heard. He just looks down. He's like, I can't believe he said
I don't know
that.
if he felt that. Come on.
Well, he had quite the look on his face. I'm projecting. Okay.
Yeah,
he seemed very present in the moment in taking this line. He said that you've been kicking people's heads in, Danielson, but you can't handle it when people start kicking back. This is not an achievement award. It proves you're the best in the world, and I am the best. You lost to Will Ospreay, and you got hurt. I beat Ospreay. You got pinned in Anarchy in the arena. I led Team AEW to victory in blood and guts. Last year, I was at All In. You were too hurt to even fly to London. And maybe your body just can't hold up to being a champion anymore, and says you're getting into the ring with the most dangerous man in AEW. And when I'm done, you may never walk again. And as Swerve goes to leave, Danielson says, Swerve, I've got one more promise. If I don't win this title, I will never wrestle again. And Excalibur's like, oh, we've heard him talk about being a part-time wrestler, but what does this mean? And it is title versus career as they shake on it. And Danielson says that he will keep that promise. And Swerve says, keep that promise with your family. So we've got a big time stipulation for August 25th for the title versus Danielson's career. And maybe an explanation was needed about how his contract is working out for all of this, because I could see some people being a little confused by that. But a big segment, and I think this makes this this really solidifies this as this was already to many people the main event. I mean, this is the unquestioned hook on the show. That is Danielson's career on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about Bryan's promo first. I thought this was actually a really great promo from Bryan Danielson tonight. I mean, to me, like, all of Bryan's most memorable promos are ones where he's not necessarily talking about kicking somebody's ass. They're the ones where he's either talking about retirement or actually retiring, or talking about coming back from retirement. And this was certainly one of those.
This is a good cycle for him to go through.
He's the best when he's talking about retirement. Yes. These tend to be the ones where, like, they feel obviously the most authentic. They feel like they're more conversations with a good friend rather than any sort of in-character performance. And this was one of those. Like, he gave us some of that, Danielson wisdom. That sounds very true to life, whether or not, he was like saying it on a wrestling stage. There were moments in this where I think he was fighting back genuine smiles and tears. And then Swerve had to come in here, and he's, we talk about Ospreay being in a tough spot. Swerve is also in a really tough spot in all of this. He's somebody now who has to come in, and he is a babyface. Just remember Blood and Guts last week, the top babyface of the entire team. He's a babyface having to come out here to oppose a guy who's a bigger babyface than he is, despite him not being the champion. And I thought Swerve really handled the situation really well. He came in full of confidence and just, I think, stayed very true to his character without any sort of sudden shifts towards like being a stereotypical heel. Like he's very likely, I don't know if he'll get booed at Wembley, but I don't know if he'll get cheered very much, at least, in the closing moments of the match, because this is, almost, it's a position where he's Shawn Michaels against Ric Flair. He's sort of the reluctant baby face who has to put the old dog, Old Yeller, out in the shed. And I thought Swerve just handled himself really well here. He brought up great points arguing about why he's better. And I think the stipulation is wonderful. First, it's a commitment to the crowd to tell them that if you're going to pay a ticket or if you're going to buy this pay-per-view, you're going to see something special. You'll either see Bryan Danielson win this championship in front of a stadium crowd, his first AEW championship, or you're going to see Bryan Danielson's last match. And either of those things, I think, are worth the price of admission. So it's I think one of the biggest cards Tony can play for this pay-per-view and this match, and I think it's actually a great move.
Does this lean you towards does this give you kind of an idea of like one way to go over another for the outcome of this match?
Yeah. So I don't think it's out of the question that Danielson would have had some sort of change of heart, and instead of like coming back periodically for certain matches, he would just say, I'm just going to be done with it altogether. I don't think that's I don't think that's not a possibility. I also think that it's possible he wins. And if he does win, what sort of presence is he going to have with the championship belt? If he's no longer going to be a full-time performer, or can he be on a part-time? Can AEW do a part-time Roman Reigns style of champion with Bryan Danielson there? Or does he simply win it and then drops it, in relatively quick fashion, after maybe 2 or 3 months? That's also very possible as well. I think if I have to lean towards one direction, it would be Danielson winning the championship and then moving on to maybe a part-time career after that.
I think that the best way to capitalize off of this, like, this is such a big match, and I think you want to end with that big moment, is Danielson wins the championship, and then he announces, I cannot just leave this title vacant. And he says, I'm going to go until I lose this title. And then
love it.
He only needs to wrestle on pay-per-view, but you have the notion that anytime you buy an AEW pay-per-view for the next however many months, it could be the last Bryan Danielson match. Because once he loses this title, doesn't mean he's retired forever, but he loses the title and he's disappears for a long time, and it's a while before we see him. And it's kind of like the Ric Flair storyline. Like, I'll go until I lose, and you do that as champion. And that could be, he could defend it at Grand Slam. It gets you a reason to buy the pay-per-view in Tacoma, Washington, that I think everyone expects him to do. But it's one match a month that he could do as just a pay-per-view performer. And every pay-per-view, is this going to be the last Bryan Danielson match?
I love that. Now, how would he reason that after saying what he said today about keeping promises to his family?
I think the key is that I have worked my entire career for this championship, and I think it all comes down to the promo. Like, I've got the blessing of my family that I can't walk away from this goal that has eluded me.
Brody Danielson needs to come out there, grab a microphone and say, "Daddy, you can keep wrestling as long as you have that championship."
Yeah, you could. Birdie and Buddy.
It's all up to her.
Could talk him out of the forced retirement. So I think that's one way to go about it, and it could end up back on Swerve, or if you have somebody else in mind. But I think you could get like several months out of that potentially, or you just go to Tacoma. Like, that seems to be a potential. That would be logical. But Bryan Danielson is never like the logical outcome. I think he's always thinking outside the box of what to do with. So I think
retire on a rampage in front of the esports arena in Arlington.
That's it. Goodbye, everyone. To Beast Mortals.
He'll retire in ROH. He'll retire on Honor Club. Yes.
Yeah. The Bella Brains. He'll lose the title in a trivia contest. Danielson is seen walking to the back. Renee tries to get a comment from him, and he runs into Team Jarrett, and Jeff is over the moon, says, "That's the Danielson I'm talking about." Danielson says, "You want to see if I'm all in? Let's see if you're all in next week." And yes, folks, we are getting Bryan Danielson versus Jeff Jarrett in Winston-Salem, North Carolina next week.
I am into this. All right, like
everyone's into this.
I don't. I mean, I feel like Jarrett matches for me, like throughout this AEW run, have kind of been like, okay, like I'm not sure why he's here. I'm not sure why he's wrestling so much, but like I'm kind of getting a kick out of it in these sort of tag matches with Jay Lethal. But ever since the Owen and that promo, I'm into Jeff Jarrett as a singles wrestler. I'm into Jeff Jarrett as a serious wrestler, and you don't get a more serious match than a singles match against Bryan Danielson. So. I think the way they play this will be really interesting. How they book it, what type of wrestling style that they do. But Danielson, the historian that he is, and Jarrett obviously being the veteran that he is, they could do something very special and unique.